Mr. Healy accuses Mr. Ben's man of organised barracking of him, then says, "Sorry, wrong man." Another British colony goes into independence and expects Britain to keep her independent of her neighbours. And another woman who's allergic to almost everything. What hopes for her recovery? A fresh row broke out today in Labour's deputy leadership campaign. Mr. Dennis Healy claimed on television that John Landsman, a leading supporter of Mr. Tony Benn, was responsible for orchestrating the barracking of his speeches at Birmingham yesterday and in Cardiff 2 months ago. Mr. Landsman denied that he'd been at either place and immediately demanded an apology. This Mr. Healy gave him tonight, although it hasn't satisfied Mr. Landsman, who may now consider legal action. At yesterday's Labour rally in Birmingham, Mr. Healy had to struggle to be heard against the booing of the crowd, though earlier speakers, among them Mr. Benn, who then left, had got a hearing. Today, Mr. Healy made this accusation.
Both yesterday and at Cardiff, where we had the same sort of barracking, the barracking was actually led and orchestrated by Mr. John Landsman, I saw him doing it, who is organising Mr. Benn's campaign.
Mr. Healy's case of mistaken identity over Mr. Landsman is an embarrassment for his supporters at the start of the final week of the deputy leadership campaign. Soon after Mr. Landsman, who's one of Mr. Benn's leading campaigners, heard about Mr. Healy's allegation, he issued a statement. It said, "Yesterday, at the time of the meeting, I was in Wales, and I can prove I was in Italy at the time of the Cardiff meeting." This led Mr. Healy, later this afternoon, to retract his allegation and apologise. But he didn't withdraw his basic accusation, declaring, "My mistake in identifying the individual responsible does not alter the important facts. There was an organised attempt at both rallies to prevent me being heard, carried out by supporters of Mr. Benn." But this apology doesn't appear to satisfy Mr. Landsman. In a further statement, he said that unless he got an unreserved apology, he would consider legal action. Mr. Benn was questioned several times on the programme about the shouting down. He said he was very sorry it happened, but did he unequivocally condemn tactics of this kind?
I believe in free speech. I believe in the right of everybody to express a view on the media, through Fleet Street and at public meetings. I'm not going to comment on things that I didn't witness. As I said, I was lying in a hospital bed while the Cardiff demonstration took place, and every day colleagues from the shadow cabinet were engaged in a violent denunciation. I never heard that repudiated by anybody, and I wouldn't expect them to, because I don't hold Dennis or John responsible for the things that are said by their supporters.
As to the effect of all this on the deputy leadership contest, Mr. Healy's supporters don't think it will damage his chances. And some of Mr. Benn's side don't think it will become a make-or-break issue either. Their advice to Mr. Healy is not to smear, but to get back to the issues.
In just over 8 hours' time, Britain's last colony on the American mainland, Belize, will get its independence. The British have been in Belize for 100 years. Prince and Princess Michael of Kent are there now to take part in the celebrations, as Martin Bell reports.
It used to be British Honduras. Now it's Belize. It's on the Mosquito Coast of Central America, but it was turned by the Gordon Highlanders into a corner of Scotland. Eyes front for Prince Michael of Kent, the Queen's cousin, and her representative for the transfer of sovereignty from Britain to Belize. The Guard of Honour was drawn from the garrison of the disputed territory. And the first thing the Prince did after his arrival was to go on a tour of it. An RAF Puma helicopter took him almost the length of the colony from the Rio Hondo to the Saskatoon River, calling in at the district towns for their day of celebrations. He had with him the Governor, Mr. James Hennessy, who'll be out of a job after tonight, and the Prime Minister, Mr. George Price, who won't be, but for the first time will be leading an independent nation. The royal tour started in the north near the Mexican border, where it seemed all 6,000 people had turned out in the town of Corozal. Belizeans are a multitude of peoples. This was the dance of the Garafunas, Caribs whose ancestors sought refuge here from the French 200 years ago. Prime Minister Price sees his country today as a haven of peace in a turbulent region, this despite the threat from Guatemala. So on south to the sugar town of Orange Walk, the San Jose Band playing on their 100-year-old instruments. Again, all the influences of Belize were here. Mexican, Mayan, Carib, even British, to celebrate an independence that only the Guatemalans oppose. Martin Bell, BBC, Orange Walk, Belize.
In Lebanon, a bomb exploded inside a crowded cinema in the capital, Beirut, killing at least 4 people and injuring more than 30 others. It brings the number of deaths in bomb attacks during the past 4 days to 31. The bomb went off during the afternoon performance at a cinema in the Muslim quarter of Beirut. After firemen had put out the fire caused by the explosion, rescue workers brought out the dead and injured. It's feared the number of dead may be much higher than the 4 who died immediately. A little-known group, calling themselves the Front for the Liberation of Lebanon from Foreigners, claimed responsibility, the same organization which carried out 4 car bomb attacks during the past week. A young black woman has been chosen as Miss Zimbabwe during a second contest for the title in Salisbury. The first competition was abandoned when it became apparent that a white woman was likely to win. The government had said that it would be embarrassing if Miss Zimbabwe were picked from the country's white minority. So this time there was only one white woman among the finalists.
Number 7 is Miss Zimbabwe 1981.
There were also accusations that the new Miss Zimbabwe's victory had been rigged, but the judges say they chose the most beautiful girl, and she'll go on to the Miss World contest. A woman who suffers pain from virtually everything she eats, drinks, or smells has tonight been given a bed in a local hospital in Leicestershire. But 50-year-old Joan Westcott still doesn't know how she'll cope with what doctors call a total allergy syndrome. Christopher Powell went to see her.
Until 12 years ago, Joan Westcott was an anthropologist working at Sussex University. Since then, she's developed allergies to almost everything. Her diet now is mainly plain fish and water. She can't eat wheat flour, meat, or drink milk, or eat any food containing sugar. Petrol, gas, and chemical fumes make her pass out. 10 years ago, Joan was fit and healthy, working on field projects in Africa and Jamaica. Today, she's a frail, extremely nervous woman with nowhere to go. Joan, what do you think is going to happen to you now?
I have no idea. There's nowhere I can go because, unlike other people, if they're ill, they can go to a hospital. Hospitals are harmful to me and to other severe allergics. Other people, if they're homeless or traveling, they can go to a hotel. I can't because of the tobacco, the disinfectants, the polishes. No one can cope with a grain-free and milk-free diet.
Joan does have one hope, treatment in an American total allergy clinic, but that will cost at least £50,000. But Joan has no family, no friends, and very little money.
Sheila Rossell, the Bristol woman who's had treatment in America for a similar problem, is still not properly recovered. She now needs a dental operation because some fillings have affected her gums, and she started losing weight again. Her treatment so far has cost about £50,000. A 17-year-old youth was arrested outside Buckingham Palace this afternoon by a policeman who suspected him of having an offensive weapon. Police searched the youth and found an air gun. They say he didn't threaten anyone or produce the weapon. He's detained overnight at Cannon Row Police Station. None of the royal family is at Buckingham Palace at present. Cleaning up has been going on today after the violent storms which swept across southern England and Wales last night, claiming at least 3 lives. Gales of 80 miles an hour brought havoc to shipping. A fisherman was drowned at Bantam in Devon, another man died aboard his yacht near Holyhead, and the body of a man was found in the sea at Milford Haven. Southampton Boat Show caught the full force of the storm as it was closing down yesterday evening. Exhibitors had already been asked to move their craft when force 9 gales were reported imminent, so the main victim was the huge marquee at the show, which was flattened. The weather also affected the second day of the World Angling Championships at Luddington in Warwickshire, where the River Avon rose 10 inches overnight. Yesterday, France won the team contest. Today, several thousand spectators saw anglers compete for the individual title. It was a 3-hour match, and the winner was Dave Thomas of Leeds. The United States golfers have retained the Ryder Cup. 3.5 points from the first 4 completed singles were enough to end Europe's slim hopes. Clive Ferguson reports.
The overnight rain had turned many bunkers into water hazards. Europe's Sam Torrance was the man facing this particular problem. But having played himself out of trouble, he only just escaped having to do the same again. America's Larry Nelson, though, had no such difficulties as he made his approach to the 17th. Nelson then putted for a 2-hole victory over Mark James, and that helped America end the final day with 18.5 points to Europe's 9.5. The former Prime Minister, Edward Heath, was among the spectators enjoying today's golf, even though he wasn't too happy about the final result.
I said I didn't take Britain into the European community in order to be beaten by the Americans.
And that's the news tonight. Good night.